Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is great to be here. And we've got a fantastic interview for you today. One of my all-time favorite people in the whole wide world is with us. She is a very accomplished actress. She's a best-selling author, an award-winning author, many awards. And she's also now narrating books, which is very exciting. We've got Harley Jane Kozak. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, Harley, good to see you.
Yeah.
Here.
So I do want to put you on the psychiatric couch a little bit, and I want to ask you about your childhood. And I'm very curious to know whether or not you think your childhood contributed to you becoming an actress and an author, etc. Were you a shy child? Did you have imaginary friends? Were you outgoing, athletic? Tell us about it.
Well, I had a somewhat unusual upbringing. I guess that's true of everybody, but I am the youngest of 8 kids.
Oh, wow.
My dad died when I was 1 year old. So my mom
Mm.
was a widow at 39 with 8 kids.
Holy moly.
I was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. My mom moved us to the Midwest following her teaching career, which she got up and running zippity quick because she'd been a stay-at-home mom. And so I mostly grew up with a short stint in North Dakota, and then mostly grew up in rural Nebraska, where my mom taught at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, but we lived on a farm on the outskirts of town. And I was the kids just older than me, starting at 3 years older, and then 5 and 7 and 9, etc., were all boys. So my sisters were way older. So I was in many ways kind of almost an only child. And my grandmother lived with us mostly to take care of me. And she died when I was 9. So at 9, even though I was surrounded by a very loving family, I was very much on my own. And because the farm was isolated, there was nobody I could go and play with. There was no like neighborhood. The neighborhood was like, there were cows that somebody else took care of, and there were a lot of dogs and cats. And so I had an enormous amount of alone time and what I would describe as benign neglect. And it suited me really well. I think it sparked my imagination and had me making up stories for as long as I can remember. And it made me a reader. And when I had gone through all my age-appropriate books, I started reading my mom's stash she loved murder mysteries. So I was reading Agatha Christie and an author named Georgette Heyer, who is still one of my favorites. I reread this woman all the time, and she's equally good on audio. And when my mom died, I got we didn't have a lot to split up, but I wanted the paperback collection of the Georgette Heyer novels. So they're all falling apart at the seams, but yes, so I'm the proud owner of those. And then I went on to reading things. I remember reading The Godfather because one of the older kids was reading it. And, that's how I learned about sax. And if you remember early on, Sonny and the Bridesmaid at the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I was a very literary kid, and I also loved reading out loud. I remember sitting in the bathtub and reading out loud. And I don't know why that was entertaining for me, but of course now I look back on that and say I was a natural as an actor and a narrator. And I was a very shy kid, painfully shy. And yet I found that some magic happened when I was on stage, and it sort of transcended my shyness. And of course, I found a family on stage, when I was in high school. And it was my mom also, I should say, was a music teacher. And so art was very important in our family. we didn't have much money, to put it mildly, but we had a lot of books and records and music lessons and a piano. And I think also because I was the youngest, like everyone else in the family, whatever expectations my mom might have had for the other kids, by the time I came along, everybody was exhausted. So, I didn't realize how unusual it was and how blessed I was to have a supportive family until I got to acting school at NYU, the School of the Arts, which is now Tisch School of the Arts. And I realized how many kids don't have parents who encourage them in their artistic pursuits, because of course, there's no money in it. And my mother could not have cared less. So she thought it was perfectly fine that I wanted to be a professional actor. And so that's what I did. And yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, did you have imaginary friends?
I didn't, but I had dogs and cats and I had stories going on in my head, but I didn't ever think that they were real. It was clear to me that I was making them up. But my sister Dory had an imaginary friend named Cookie Lavin. Now, why I know my sister's imaginary friend, but she's enough older than me that by the time I can remember, she didn't have an imaginary friend anymore. But that was so evocative, like the name, Cookie Lavin. So I put that in my first novel.
Love it. Love it.
It's your first novel, which won a bunch of awards, including the Macavity Award. And I remember that so well because we won the same night and
Yes.
at Macavity's. And I remember when you went up to get your trophy, you made me hold your purse. I'll never will forget that. But
Doug,
yeah,
have that happen to you often.
yeah. Kathy makes me hold her purse while she's purse shopping too. But yeah, that was a special night. That was fun. But you're writing. That was your first book. And and you won like what, the Agatha and the Anthony and the Macavity or something like that for it.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Dating Dead Men. I remember it well. It's just a
yeah,
fabulous book.
that
Highly
was very...
recommend it to this day. So absolutely, people need to get that book and read it. Dating Dead Men. Love it.
And you've had a cool acting career too. I mean, you've made some good movies, Arachnophobia, but my favorite was The Favor. I mean, that was such a clever little movie, and you were so good at it, and I really enjoyed that one. It was good.
I love Parenthood.
Dogs. Thank you.
Yeah.
So cool. So very cool. So let's talk about what you're doing now. I know you're doing a lot of narration for authors, and we need to let people know about that in case I don't know how you go about picking up clients or how that works, but we'd like to hear about it.
Oh, well, so I'm going to say 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, I should say that, so I had an acting career. I took a 15-year maternity leave when I had children. I had my kids very late in life. Pretty late. I was 43 when my daughter was born and 45 when my twins were born. And they were all IVF babies with an egg donor. I always say that because the nightmare of infertility, for anyone out there who says, oh, I should just hang in there. Like, look, it happened for Harley. No, it didn't. I had a lot of scientific help and egg donors. But anyway, all of which is to say, by the time I was in my 40s, first of all, I was, ancient in Hollywood film and television standards. And secondly, I had waited so long to have children, I wanted to be there for them. And thirdly, my mom had been so overwhelmed that she wasn't able to be around for a lot of my childhood, and I wanted to be the kind of mom that, drove her kids to school. So I was happy to take a long maternity leave from acting. And that's when I started to write and publish books. But then at some point when my kids were in middle school, I thought, I kind of miss acting. So I started going back to it. And then one day I thought, I love audiobooks and I've always been a narrator. I volunteered at the Braille Institute when I first moved to LA. And I did that for 13 years until my first baby was born. And it was just it's just like a natural thing. It's just purely fun for me. And I'm pretty good at cold reading. So, and then I narrated a few early audiobooks. One that I narrated actually won an Audie Award, which I didn't even know because they were so new, and it was in a category that doesn't exist anymore. It was best, what do you call it? Okay, I'm having a senior moment. What's that word where they make it shorter and edit it?
Abridged.
Abridged. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yes, abridged. Okay. So they had a category back in the early aughties for best abridged novel or mystery. Anyway, there was a wonderful author, maybe she's still alive, Kat Kajewski. And Kat with a K, she wrote a series like Honky Tonk Cat was the one I narrated. Anyway, they were murder mysteries, and it was so much fun to narrate that. And then I did some short story collections, etc. But that was all back in the 90s when they were still called books on tape. So anyway, I thought, hey, I wonder if I could revive my narration. And so I went online and said, you know, how does it work now? I mean, now that it's 20 years later. Well, of course, it's completely different because in the 90s, there wasn't Audible and yeah, everything was different. So I took an online class on how to do it. And I called up my friend Patty Smiley, who is the author of a bunch of novels. And I happen to know that she had the audio rights to her most recent series. And I said, can I use one of your books as a guinea pig? And I'll do it for free. And she said, yes, except I'm going to pay you, which she did very generously. But anyway, I sort of taught myself via online classes how to produce them as well as narrate. So, and I did all the sound mixing myself, and I did, and I uploaded them to Audible. I did the whole thing myself, and it took me an egregious amount of time. I can't even tell you. And so anyway, I've now narrated, I think I'm up to 15 books, including, excitingly, so I did 3 of Patty's books, and then a couple others. F. Paul Wilson, you guys obviously know him. So I got to do some of Paul's books, thrilling, and Matt Whitten, who you know. I've done a couple of Matt Whitten's books, a wonderful author named Charlotte Stewart. Anyway, and Gay Total Kinman. So, and what's great about it is I haven't auditioned for anybody. They just sort of found me, or I found them, or we had a conversation. And I think that's one of the things I love so much about narrating is, unlike the life of an actor where your whole life is an audition and having to prove yourself to somebody and having to beg somebody to hire you for a job. And it's so demoralizing, especially after a certain point. Like, I just thought, I'm so over this. I'm so over the Hollywood thing. And, trying to ask, a 25-year-old for a job, and I'm like 67. I can't do it anymore. So anyway, and then I kind of burnt out on self-tapes, which became a huge thing during COVID. And while I enjoyed doing it, it would derail my life for a couple of days. So anyway.
Do you still record them from your bathtub?
No, I never recorded
You
them
graduated.
in the bathtub.
Well, you said you read out loud in the bathtub. I thought.
I wasn't recording myself.
Okay.
Little. No, for anyone out there, do not try that at home, because a bathtub or a bathroom is the worst place. Because obviously sound is bouncing off all hard surfaces. So I started doing it in my walk-in closet upstairs in my house. And then at some point I called up a guy, I think it's called Sound Booths by Scott, a guy in LA who makes custom sound booths. And anyway, I have a really groovy sound booth up in my closet. Now, the good news is that I really loved it and had a great time. And the bad news is it takes me so long that it's not, I'm in a place where I had to pause it for a minute because it was eating up my life. Even after I hired a sound engineer, who's a great guy, and I've never met him. He lives somewhere in Maryland. But what I really think I need is a director who says, no, that was fine. Keep going. Because my own ear, I'm so picky. I'm such a perfectionist. If I didn't like my performance, I mean, in a way, it's a luxury because as an actor, if you do a take and they, especially, and I did soaps for 5 years, and if you just even approximate what you're supposed to do, it's like, okay, great, moving on. And you think, oh, but no, I can do it better. It's like, no, you don't get time to do it better. And film and television, aside from soaps, is a little more generous that way. But to have the luxury of just myself, just pleasing myself, it is a luxury because I'm not even close to minimum wage when I tally up how many hours I spend recording an audiobook. No, it's
Well, I know exactly what I recorded a couple of my books, and the two things that I came away with is number one, like three, it takes an incredible amount of time to do.
Yep.
Number two, since I'm reading my work, I've had to stop myself from editing along the way because I would change things. And I would say it in my writing group. You say it all the time. That's not what you wrote. Yeah, but that's better. That kind of thing. You can't do that. And three, I had to keep telling myself in my brain, slow down, slow down, slow down, because you start reading too fast. And it's the time consumption that is just overwhelming. So if someone out there wants to record their own book, and let's say they have the capability of doing the technical capability of doing it, what can you tell them that might save them some heartache and angst? Just bite the bullet and do it, or are there tricks?
My advice would be I'd turn back if I were you, unless they have lots of time. And I would say do a chapter and see if you actually love the process.
Yeah.
That was the only saving grace, is that I love the process. And then, maybe get a second opinion on whether, now, a couple of things. Number one, it's a big learning curve. You have to, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on equipment. You don't need to buy a, custom sound booth. You do have to have somewhere in your house that you can, play around with the sound. And you need it's for me, it was a learning curve to understand, all of which I've forgotten now that I've hired a sound guy, to understand what room tone is, and you have to learn your own editing techniques, and there's a million classes online. So that's the good news. And in-person classes, like, it's a huge industry. So another thing, now, Doug, this is interesting because unlike you, it makes me crazy how slowly I read. And I took a class, I've taken a couple classes where they've said, slow down. And as a listener, that doesn't work for me. Mostly I speed it up. When I'm listening to a book on Audible, I speed it up. I listen to most books at 1.2, and my own narration, I can't stand how slow I am. I speed it up. Okay. And
Interesting.
That's because I'm really picky about enunciating and accents and whatever. So, but you're right. Most people will be told slow down. And also, That seems to be the fashion in teaching classes, and it drives me crazy.
Okay.
It actually
You know,
does.
some narrators are they just straight up read the book, and
Yeah.
some of them act the book,
Right.
and everything in between.
Everything in between. Yep.
What's your bias? How do you feel about? I mean, are you playing multiple characters with multiple voices when you're reading? Are you
Oh,
more
yeah.
or less just telling the tale?
No, I'm doing all the things, but I don't make a conscious choice. I mean, I make very conscious choices. I have to read the book first, and make notes about how to distinguish this voice from that, what accents I need to work on. And I try and do it all. I try to make my male voices less like low register, because if I try to keep them low, first of all, they all sound alike. Secondly, it sucks all of the variation and expression out of a voice if you're trying to keep it in one register. And so, and okay, this is a big warning for those of you who are going to try this. You will come to be so picky about what you listen to as an audiobook consumer. I used to love everybody, and now it's shrunk down to like a handful of narrators that I can stand with American accents. For some reason, I'm a lot more generous with, UK accents. But I will say that it's going to make you pickier about what you listen to after you've done it yourself.
Yeah, I think the same way for writers. You become picky about who you're going to read once you start writing, because you're sitting there editing, say, that's terrible. I wouldn't have done that.
That's terrible. I wouldn't have done that. How many times have you two gone back to read a book that was an early favorite, like in your teenage years or in your 20s, and you go, why did I think this was any good? Oh, it's so distressing. And it happened to me as an actor. So this should not have come as a surprise. Like, I'm really picky about, movies and television, but I wasn't expecting that it would happen with audiobooks, but of course it did. So I now notice, and I really pay attention to male narrators where all their female voices sound like, and you think, but she sounds so wimpy. And then female narrators, and all their men are sounding like this. And it's like, why do they all sound so angry? And it's because we're not naturally good at putting on those other voices, but some are just genius at doing the opposite gender. And I think in that respect, less is more, in my personal opinion. But if you read audiobook reviews, you'll see that the thing that delights half the readers is the thing that just bugs the heck out of the other half. Yeah. And there are narrators who constantly make the top 10 and the 10 worst lists.
Oh, interesting. So is there one thing that like is your biggest, like, oh, can't stand it?
Here's one. And here's what's good is you can tell it instantly. You don't have to listen to 5 minutes of a sample. You can hear it right away. Is when a narrator lets their voice do da 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 da, and then she got in the car, and then she drove to the store, and then she met the man and she pulled out a gun, and then she shot him. It's they find themselves in a rhythmic rut, and I can't bear it. My ears just want to scream. And then the bad other gender, if they're trying really hard, and and then sometimes, oh my God, oh, this is bad. So I was doing Patty Smiley's second book, I think. And I called her, I said, Patty, I think I lisp. I said, I think I have to redo your whole book. She said, you don't lisp. I said, no, I'm hearing lisp. And also I'm hearing mouth clicks. She said, what are mouth clicks? I said, it's those little strange noises, like the saliva is like gets caught in a certain place, or you have dry mouth. And she said, okay, you're hallucinating. I don't know what you're hearing, but nobody else is hearing that. I can hear it now with narrators. In fact, sometimes I'll listen to a podcast. Have you ever heard, like, you're listening to a podcast and the guest, it's like you're just begging them to take a drink of water because the dry mouth, I can't bear it. So if I listen to someone and there's too much mouth noise, now a good sound engineer can edit that out, but like on a live podcast, they're not really doing that, right?
Exactly.
I can't listen to anyone with mouth noises. Yeah, bad opposite gender.
So
And
what's next for you? What are you doing now?
Yeah.
Where does Harley go next?
I
Yeah.
also want to say this. I did not narrate my own books.
Yeah.
When I was writing them, my book contracts, I was writing too quickly. And also I didn't own my own audio rights.
Right.
If you have a traditional publisher, you probably don't. And you probably don't get much say, if any, unless you're a major star with who narrates your book. But if you happen to be self-published or you own your own rights because your publisher went out of business and the rights reverted to you, you can hire pretty easily narrators on Audible. So, and you can find out how by just doing a little research. It's super fun. It's going to cost you a little bit of money, but okay.
What's the range for that?
It ranges from free, because they're going to do a royalty share with you, to, I don't know, $500 per finished hour. That's not $500 an hour of, actual work time. That's if your book turns out to be an 8-hour audiobook, which, would be pretty standard, I guess, for a mystery thriller. That's going to cost you several $1,000s. And if you want like a top of the line narrator, you're going to have to wait a few years for them.
Yep.
Yeah. But everyone has if they're in the marketplace for Audible, which is called Audacity, which anyone can sign up for free, you can hear audition tapes, you can hear what else they've done. And if you hit it off and you love their voice for your book, you can, they're for hire and they'll have their rate posted.
Who's your all-time favorite narrator?
Oh, wow. There's a narrator who did hang on. Laurie King's books. Jenny Serlin, I think her name was. She's British, but she died. I mean, that's tough when you're used to a narrator and then they die. All my favorites are British. Really love Simon Vance, who did the complete Sherlock Holmes. I mean, a lot of people have done Sherlock Holmes, but anyway, yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool.
We love those accents.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I have to say, they do a great job with accents. The British people, although now, interestingly, some of the best British narrators, when they're doing Americans, we all sound so crummy. We just sound like, I'm sure that we sound to them when we do British accents as horrible as they can sound to us. So accents are tricky. Yeah.
That's so funny. But I want to circle back to Doug's question. So what is next for you? What are you up to?
So I'm writing a work of literary fiction which doesn't have a murder in it, and honestly, my first and last book that is not a mystery or thriller, because it's so hard. And but it's, hopefully I'll be done with it someday. But because I'm writing it on spec and I don't have a deadline, even though I try and invent deadlines for myself, it hasn't worked yet. So I've been writing it for more than 10 years, and I don't even want to look and see exactly how many years, but yeah. And then
Labor of love.
it's a labor of love, and hopefully it will be published one day. And, my agent hasn't given up on me, and I have, and then, you stop because, you decide to write a short story, or someone invites you to, write for an anthology or an essay or something. So it's not like I haven't done other things. And then I've also done several movies in between there. And before you ask, most of them are indie films, which are, I seem to be the queen currently of the low budget, the ultra low budget. Yes, there's a category in Screen Actors Guild, ultra low budget. That means mostly I'm wearing my own clothes. And yeah, there's a particular blue dress that I own that I wore, I bought for a funeral. And it's very classy. And yeah, I've worn it in, I think, 4 films. So I'm, so I've been doing other things, of course. And but the book that I'm writing now, which honestly takes so much of my time, and I dream about it at night, and I always have a chapter printed out and stuck in my purse that I'm editing. I am in the editing phase, and I'm trying to make it shorter, but for everything I cut, I seem to need to add a little bit. And then I'll stop and research this and that and this and that. And it's been like my life's companion for the last decade plus.
So do you think that you're just not letting go of it, or do you really think these were?
No, I'm thinking that it has to be exactly as I want it. It has to be exactly right. I do not, honestly, I'm scared that, Doug, what you just said, that's going to be me. Like, I'm going to be narrating it someday, because now that I have I could now, even if my book gets sold to a traditional publisher and I don't have the rights, I believe that I now have enough street cred as a narrator that my agent can say, by the way, she needs to narrate it herself. And they can go and check me out and go, okay, she's a professional. That's fine. But I do not want to be sitting in my sound booth up in my closet and wanting to edit as I go.
You will.
Yeah,
you will.
As long as it's just little things. But I feel like, it's, because I don't have a contract for this book, I have the luxury to get it exactly right. And because it's so hard for me, because it's not a mystery, because it's not clear, it's, a mystery or a thriller, you pretty much know what the end is. And for this one, I feel like, it's tricky.
Still a work in progress.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, Harley Jane, it is so great to have you. We've got to have you back, especially when the book does come out.
Yes. Yeah.
But, you just have to come back and play with us another time, because you're a fun interview.
Yeah.
Assuming we're all still alive and kicking by the time it comes out.
Where there's breath, there's hope.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a treat. I can't wait to see you in person. Maybe our paths will cross at a conference soon. It seemed like it's been years, but I do love your Christmas cards. You make the best Christmas cards every year ever. They're spectacular.
Thank you.
That concludes this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel. But we will be back with other interviews and other fun stuff down the road. So hang in there, and we'll see you soon.